Hi everybody, welcome to the CCCX update and thank you for joining me for another fantastic interview this year. 2024, we've been truly blessed with some brilliant guests and today is no exception. Irina has joined me to talk about the disconnect between WFM teams and super users for other telephony and other CRM ticketing tools within businesses. So a very particular issue and an area that we haven't really covered before. Irina, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, James. It's a pleasure.
Well, just to explain to people a little bit about yourself. So Irina brings a wealth of experience spanning every facet of WFM and a depth of knowledge and a background in creative solutions. Having worked in various capacities within BPOs, vendors, and as a consultant, she's been exposed to all dimensions and roles connected to WFM. That diverse journey has allowed her to personally deliver solutions, optimize planning processes, and establish WFM teams, structures, and workflows from the ground up for over 50 organizations globally. And they range from small enterprise to multinational giants and span across regions including China, the US, Canada, Australia, India, South Korea, and across Europe. So yeah, we've got a real expert with us today, which is fantastic. And as I said, we're going to be talking about that disconnect between the WFM teams and the super users within other telephony and CRM ticketing tools. Irina's going to set the scene for us a little bit, give a bit more detail on her background so that you can understand exactly where she's coming from. We're going to be looking at why this is such a critical issue and whether or not it can be felt by the customers as well. As always, we're going to be looking at some practical advice on how this issue can be addressed if you feel the same way. And then going back to the customer, we're going to be looking at those then benefits to the customer if we address those issues. And finally, we'll be talking about Right WFM, which is the consulting business that Irina heads up as well. So jumping in then, first off, Irina, set the scene for our audience. What's your background then regarding WFM in a bit more detail, and where have you seen this problem be particularly critical in your experience?
First of all, thank you for the introduction. I'm starting to blush. I can't possibly introduce myself in a better way. But as I always say, my entire background is in workforce management. I started working in a contact center directly in a planning role, and I've been working in various roles, as you mentioned, for the last 15 plus years. And I have been an intraday specialist, a forecaster, a planner, a manager. I've worked in BPOs, I've worked in-house, I've worked as a consultant on a vendor side. So I pretty much cover all of the span of the different WFM roles out there. So I have been exposed to quite a lot of challenges, and one of them, and it's a recurring one that's very painful, not only for planning people like myself, but to all of organizations out there, is the disconnect that happens between the super users in a different telephony systems and CRMs and the WFM teams. And for me, one of the reasons why that happens is that planning teams are notoriously known for being responsible only for WFM tools, if there are any in the organizations, or for Excel related to planning. And then we have super users that are responsible for the other telephony systems. And there seems to be a disconnect where these two responsibilities overlap and who is in charge and how does that whole communication needs to happen. So I would say, in a short, I've seen that as a recurring problem. And to be fair, I don't think I've worked with an organization that hasn't had this problem. So I'm really hoping that we can flush it out and make a change with it.
Fair enough. And why do you think this is such an important issue, and who's mainly impacted by it?
Oh, for me, everyone is being impacted from the customers who are overall impacted because, listen, the main responsibility of a contact center, right, is to secure availability of agents to assist the customers and then to assist the customers in the best possible way. So whenever there is an internal misalignment, overall the customers are the one who are bearing the consequences of that. On the other side, whenever the customer is impacted, then the business suffers. Whenever the business suffers, all of the employees, whether these are the agents on the front line, the team leads, the operations manager, or the planning, everyone gets to bear the consequences of internal misalignment.
Mm. And I mean, as you were saying there, you definitely feel this is an issue that can be felt by the end customer for a business. So how does the disconnect then between the WFM team and the super users of the other platforms in telephony and the CRM, how does that, I guess, transpire to the end customer? So if we're customers dealing with a business, how might we be feeling the impact of that disconnect?
Okay, let me walk you through a little bit of a detail in a bit more specific example.
Brilliant.
What usually happens is that imagine there is some sort of a decision made that we're going to introduce new queues to the telephony platform, right? And this is something that the super user goes, create those queues, and everyone is happy and live their life. But the WFM team is not aware of the changes that are made. So we're not collecting that data. So we're not planning for those queues. So we have absolutely no idea what is happening, which means that we're absolutely disregarding the data and we don't account for this work. On one end, this impacts our budget and the numbers that we're providing to senior management. On the other hand, this impacts performance because we don't account for that job. We don't care for something that we're not informed for. Therefore, we're not planning people to be available to service that job. So whenever a customer calls the IVR and selects press 2 for whatever, we have no idea that somebody is waiting to be assisted in that way. So this is exactly where the issue is starting, that you as a customer might be calling and there might be no one to pick up your issue.
Yeah, I think, communication, it's a topic, internal communication. It's a topic that's come up in a few of these interviews I've had over a long time now. And again, you're referring to it there, and something that's very difficult for organizations to get right, or it seems to be anyway. And you've said it yourself, experienced over 50 organizations globally, and you haven't really yet maybe seen one where this isn't an issue to some degree or another. So, thinking about practical advice then, how can this issue be addressed? And I suppose in the model of how you just answered that previous question, have you got a previous example of where you've seen that being done really well?
I would say that there are probably two ways to tackle that. The first one is to clearly define roles and responsibilities and to see where the different responsibilities overlap. For me, as I mentioned, the extent to the responsibilities of planning teams is too narrow and too short. And I personally believe that WFM teams should have responsibility over some sort of changes that are done in your telephony platforms to avoid of those kind of issues that are impacting the agents, that are impacting our work as well. The other one is just to secure some sort of recurring meetings where everyone gets to understand a little bit more in detail what the super users are after, what are their responsibilities, what their goal is, and what is the goal of planning. Because overall on the surface, we all know what everyone should be doing, but then everyone is looking at their side of the business, and that's when the focus tends to get distracted. So we need some sort of a helicopter view that brings everyone together and we start working towards the same goal. And on your other questions, if I have seen examples where this works really well, I have been very fortunate to work with the giant like IKEA, and actually we did a rollout of a WFM tool and an ACD across all of their countries. And initially when you do such a global project, you do need to find a way to kind of stick to one another to see what everyone is doing. But eventually we managed to secure such a level of well collaboration that any single thing that was happening in every single side of the business, the immediate question was, what does this impact? Does it impact planning? Does it impact knowledge? Does it impact something else? So I would use IKEA as one of the companies who managed to do that really, really well.
Great, nice shout out there for IKEA. That's a project I know a lot of people that worked on, as you and I spoke about the
Yeah.
first time we caught up, actually. And I know that was particularly complex as well. And IKEA, well known for a business that try and do things in innovative ways across their products, as well as the way they operate as a business. So an interesting example there as well. And then, so going back then to the customers, and even if we use the IKEA example, perhaps, or any other one. So where do you then think the customers then feel the benefit of getting this communication right, these user groups set up, broadening of responsibilities for WFM consultants? How does that transpire and appear then from a positive perspective to the customer?
To answer your question, maybe I'm going to ask you, if you're a customer and you contact the contact center in whatever shape or form, via email or WhatsApp or phone, what's your first expectation?
I suppose for my query, my problem to be addressed and engaged with as quickly as possible, really.
Yeah, I would say that for me is that somebody is there to assist me, right? This is my first goal, is to
or
get
something
to talk
as it is nowadays.
Exactly. And my other goal would be, okay, I'm calling you with a specific thing in mind. I need someone to help me, right? Those are my only two reasons why I'm contacting you today. So I would say that by doing that internal alignment, we're able to secure first that there is someone to assist you. Second of all, that there is someone to assist you in the right way. So these are the efforts that we're trying to secure from planning and WFM perspective in general. And this is why we're fighting so much to get to every single detail there is for the different departments in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago now, I spoke to Don Hadaway, and we were talking about, dealing with vulnerability and looking at that within customer groups as well. And of course, if you've got vulnerable customers calling in as well, having that disconnect between these two teams that relates to some of the issues then that you spoke about earlier on, that's only going to amplify the issues that group of customers have as well. And so I think, it really does bear thinking about across multiple categories and touch points that contact centers need to think about when they're looking to improve service across their whole customer base, doesn't it really? And finally, as I touched on at the start of our conversation, you're the founder of Right WFM Consulting. If there are WFM contractors listening to this interview and think, do you know what, Irina gets it, she's absolutely speaking my language, that sounds like a sort of business I want to be part of. Tell us just a little bit more than about Right WFM, and also how people should reach out and get in touch with you as well.
And thank you for this shout out and for this question. Really, one thing that I'm really passionate about is making a difference and making a positive change in not only organizations as such, but in people's lives that work in that organization. So if you are a WFM contractor or a specialist that is passionate for the same and that is a practitioner, that for me is very, very important, that you're a practitioner, that you get it, that you can relate to your customers. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and let's have a chat.
Yeah, I'll put a connection to your LinkedIn below. That'll be, if it's on YouTube, it'll be in the comments below. I'll also obviously put it in the actual article of the CX update, which will be going out later on today, as it is today, once I've done all my editing and things. So yeah, please do feel free to reach out to Irina. And that's one of the things we're looking to do here is create communities and create networks of people that are looking to improve the industry that we all share as professionals and as practitioners. So Irina, fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Speak to you soon.